Great. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's a lovely evening and time together. If you're on TikTok, please let's power tap. Let's keep the live going. The numbers are a bit low today, so that means we're not coming on camera, and that means that we have to power tap even more than we usually do. So please, if you're on TikTok, please power tap and share the live. Hello, Taiwo Dan. Good evening. Give me a second, please. All right. So thank you very much for being here. Again, if you're on YouTube, please. Thank you for joining us today. Great to have everybody here. We're going to have a great time. If you're on TikTok, please like the live and share. Folks on YouTube and Facebook, please like and share as well. If you're on TikTok, please click on the heart icon above my picture there and kindly join the team. If you're already a member, please drop a heart me, drop a gift. Let's push the live to the FYP together. By the way, I think there's a way to subscribe on now and become a super fan. So that's all we can be appreciated. Thank you very much. Ade Royal on TikTok, thank you very much for your support. All right. So yesterday we had a session where I talked about, I posted a video earlier today. And he said some things that got me thinking. I read the note here a couple of days ago. I only put out the video earlier today. But the things he said actually got me thinking. When he talked about the fact that what we're doing is good, but he knows that these people will not listen. And I was like, I didn't have to ask him why, because I've read some things about it already. But I thought that we should revisit one of the videos we did on that matter a while back. But before we do that, I'd like to read to you the exchange that I had with this gentleman. Of course, not everything, just the part that will help me make the point I'm trying to make tonight. All right, so he sent a message, says, "Good evening. I've enjoyed your video, the one in which you spoke about Igbos and went into history. I think it is a fair comment. I also think young Igbos need to know what happened, quote-unquote, hatred of Igbos across the country. I grew up between Kaduna and Jos, so I know a lot of things that my fellow Igbo person doesn't. For instance, just like you said, a typical Igbo man thinks that everyone from Lokoja or Makodi upwards is a Hausa man. And despite advances in IT, the ignorance persists even today. I personally think that the Igbo man should speak less and be more diplomatic and tactful in their speech. After the misadventure of the Biafra War, Colonel Ojukwu advised that if Indigbo want to live and thrive in Nigeria, they must learn to make friends with their neighbors. My guess is that advice did not go down too well with his followers, because I don't see any evidence of that happening. My point is, what's next? I am 53 and I've been hearing this tripe about Igbos being second-class citizens since I was in school. So what's the next step? Will the next generation of Igbo youth be condemned to hearing the same rubbish and supporting a mythical Biafra? Now, so we good day. Anyway, thanks for your analysis. I wish it could spread further to more of my people. But most Igbos would not be able to listen to your whole video. Just being honest, I know how my people think. And if you're free sometime, let us have a call. I would like to engage with your ideas. So this was my response to him. Good evening, Mr. Wako. Oh dear. Well, I didn't mention his name. I didn't mention his first name. I wasn't intending to pronounce that, but thankfully I didn't mention his first name. So it could be Kanu Wako for all you care. It could be any Wako. All right, so that was a slip. So good evening, Mr. Wako. Thank you very much for reaching out and for taking the time to share your reflections and personal experiences. I truly appreciate your engagement with the video and the honesty of your comments. To begin with, I do not share the view that Igbos are second-class citizens in Nigeria. Constitutionally and practically, they possess the same rights as every other ethnic group, and it is difficult to argue, if we are being objective, that these rights are being systematically denied to them as a people. What I believe often lies at the heart of the grievance is not citizenship itself, but expectations of the Nigerian state. There is, in some quarters, a deeply ingrained belief that Nigeria owes the Igbo something. That assumption, in my view, is neither realistic nor healthy for peaceful coexistence. Of course, this does not apply to everyone, and there are exceptions. I also agree that Nigeria does not have to remain trapped in its current dysfunction. However, for the country to truly work, it must be restructured to reflect its realities. We're a collection of distinct peoples and nations, and governing ourselves as though we're a single homogeneous group, an approach reinforced by the unitary tendencies inherited since the Iran era, has proven unsustainable. What is required is genuine federalism, greater autonomy, resource control, and governance that aligns with ethno-linguistic and regional realities. Thankfully, recent steps of President Tinubu's government, such as the establishment of development commissions across all geopolitical zones, suggest a movement, however gradual, in that direction. Still much more needs to be done. Once again, I sincerely appreciate your reaching out, and I am glad to hear voices such as yours from the Southeast. My hope is that more people like you will speak openly and constructively so that future generations of Igbo do not grow up with a perpetual sense of victimhood, but instead engage Nigeria as equal citizens, demanding accountability and better leadership from all quarters, not as a supposedly superior group, but as Nigerians among Nigerians. I pray that God blesses your people and indeed all the peoples of Nigeria. Regarding a call, I would be glad to continue this discussion. Please feel free to reach out to me on Telegram and so on and so forth. Anyway, all right, that was a long read. Why did I read that? Because of what we're about to discuss this evening, or what we're about to listen to. It's important to understand why certain things happen. I believe in asking and answering that question of why, because it helps you appreciate the problem and know exactly how to tackle it. And I said all of that to say that sometimes when I put things out, people say things like, oh, it's not going to get to people from the Southeast. While they're not my primary assignment, to be honest, they're not my primary target, I think it's also important to understand how Ojukwu was able to do it. Earlier today, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow, earlier today, we got a news report from Onitsha that people were, chanting and singing praises of Nnamdi Kanu, supporting the idea of, sit at home and things like that. It gets you wondering, how is it that an entire people can think in a particular direction? Earlier today as well, someone was supposed to be very educated, is a politician, is a lawyer, is very popular from the Southeast. I just felt it didn't make sense that somebody of that caliber would think just about everyone in a particular space thinks a certain way. It actually happened because of the way the information that has become the basis of the identity was spread to them. And that was the work of Ojukwu, helped by people like Achebe, Okonkon and them, Uche Chukwumeriji and the rest of them. They were able to drive that propaganda to the point where it has become the identity today. And that's why when the man here that sent me the message said to me, he said, he says, anyway, thanks for your analysis. I wish it could spread further to my people, but most Igbos would not be able to listen to your whole video. Just being honest, I know how my people think. The reason he says that is because there's something in between the truth and the person, and that thing is actually propaganda that is deeply ingrained, right? And it's a work of Ojukwu in this matter. To be honest, though, I mean, to be fair to Ojukwu, the idea of propaganda began in the 30s, and that was Azikiwe's work. Ojukwu just took it a notch higher. Why are we doing all of this? Because we're about to listen to a recording that we had here a while back when we're discussing what happened during the war. And I was doing this research, and I discovered that Ojukwu used a method that I could not have imagined he would use in order to drive a narrative home to his people. So to this day, when people talk about what happened, they talk as though they were there. They talk as though they know exactly what they're saying. They don't know jack. They're just talking. But the reason they can talk that way was because of the medium that Ojukwu used in order to get his message across. I'm going to talk more about this later, but I'd like us to all listen to this recording, Awolowo versus Ojukwu's lies, propaganda and revisionism, and stage productions. Believe it or not, this happened, during the war, and some of the things we're going to be talking about will be from the book by John St. The Nigerian Civil War. Okay? Please, while this video plays, kindly power tap on TikTok, like and share. If you're on YouTube and Facebook, thank you for joining us. Please like and share the live as well. Also, subscribe on YouTube. For folks on TikTok, please don't forget, now we be the studio. So please, let's power tap aggressively. Thank you very much. Folks on X, thanks for being here as well. Please like and repost. Okay, so let's get into this. Awolowo versus Ojukwu's lies, propaganda, revisionism, and stage productions. Let's start by reading the description, and then we'll listen to the recording. What really went down? 1 second. What really went down between Awolowo and Ojukwu? Spoiler, not what Biafran theater tries to sell. From tall tales about Awolowo, I'll tell that again. From tall tales about releasing Awolowo from Calabar prison to imaginary backroom deals about Western region's promised secession, Ojukwu spun stories that played well on the Biafran stage, but history tells a different tale. In this video, we cut through the drama using verified sources and eyewitness accounts. We unravel the stage productions, expose the propaganda, and set the record straight on what truly happened. Time to trade fiction for fact. Here is Awolowo versus Ojukwu's lies, propaganda, revisionism, and stage productions. Take a listen, please. I read something in the night, and it made me understand why certain Igbos believe what they believe. And no matter what you say, they're not going to change their mind. So whatever they believe, they'll just say, this is what my father told me. And one of the reasons is that it's not because they are bad people. It's because they really believe what they are saying. It may be a lie, but they believe it to be true. And I always believed that the way Ojukwu got that message across to them was using radio and pamphlets. Because, of course, it was a propagandist, using newspaper. They had the publication, and then, of course, they had Radio Biafra. But then it was more than that. The only shame I see in this is that they reenacted something. The idea they did was good, because we've been doing this for centuries. I'm glad they eventually caught up to doing it. But then the worst thing is that it was actually full of lies, but they now said this thing to the next generation. And that's why we now have problems in Nigeria, because the next generation believed that their parents did not lie. And I don't even think their parents knew they are lying, or they were lying. They just believed what they also heard or saw. Now let me read this to you. So I'm going to read from a book called The Nigerian Civil War. It's by a man called John St. and I'll read page 167. It says, I first heard the Biafran version of what went wrong under rather strange circumstances. It was at a charity entertainment, raising funds for refugees in Biafra a year later. The of Abatown had been invited was a melodrama depicting the blood-stained history of Biafra. The two coups, the massacres in the north, the Aburi meeting, the outbreak of war, it was all there, cleverly acted on a small stage in the dimly lit Abatown hall. Federal MIGs had been over us at dusk, spitting fire and flame, but nobody bothered about them now. The audience, entirely Biafran, apart from myself, was wrapped in what I can only describe as a deeply religious glow. The high point of the play was the invasion of the Midwest. The audience, a little like that of a Victorian music hall, participated eagerly but reverently. Then came the fall of the Midwest, groans, incredible characterization. There was banjo, my neighbor pointed out, talking blithely to Ojukwu about reaching Lagos and Ibadan soon. And there he was again, hatching a dreadful plot with Alale and Ifajuna, the gold medalist high jumper, who shot the federal prime minister in the first coup. And now quietly from the shadows of the wings came an unmistakable figure. Tall, long white gown, punchy stomach, 2 cushions, and small round spectacles on wire frames. Of course, Awolowo, deeper groans. In his hand, a symbolic bag of gold. He's doing a deal. Listen to this, in the play. Papa is supposed to be carrying money and doing a deal with Banjo. He's doing a deal on behalf of the federal government and himself with Banjo, Alale, and Ifajuna. They are to sell out to the Midwest, return to Enugu, kill Ojukwu, take over Biafra, bring the war to an end, and then the final Machiavellian twist with Awolowo turn on Gowon, depose him, and take over Nigeria. They sat down in the dingy basement in Biafra and came up with this story and acted it for the people to see. The people believed that to be true. A perfect historical scenario written perhaps by a Biafran Olinshed for a Biafran Shakespeare. The pact is sealed. Banjo orders his bewildered men not to fight. To allow the federals through. The advance from Ore turns into a retreat, the retreat into a rout. Town after town falls. The Midwest and all hopes of a quick end to the war are lost. But thank God, the wicked plotters are found out in time to save Ojukwu's life. Banjo and Ifajuna confess. Ojukwu reluctantly, Alale is his relative by marriage and he was once friends with Banjo. So Ojukwu reluctantly agrees that justice must be done. What he really want to do is just say justice must be done. The rot must be stopped. At dawn, the traitors, 4 of them, are shot by firing squad. Biafra and His Excellency leave to fight another day. Cotton, cheers, collection. The people saw that. Ojukwu and his people wrote a play and they dramatized it in front of people, telling them about what was going on in the West that they never got to. And while everything here we can spend time to debunk, the part I'm actually interested in for today is the part about Papa, where he says that they saw this white person, the long white gown, punchy stomach, in his hand a symbolic bag of gold. He's doing a deal on behalf of the federal government with Banjo, Alale, and Ifajuna. Did Awolowo do any deal with Banjo? Did Awolowo have anything to do with Ifajuna? What exactly was the connection between these people? Today we're going to get into some of those things. So let's get into this. We're going to start with how Awolowo was involved. So I said earlier that Papa was imprisoned in 63. He was released in 66 by Gowon. I want to make that very clear. He was released by Gowon. Every single book written by any sane person in this world will tell you that Gowon released Papa. Now, there's a gazette of the federal government that was published on 12th August 1966 that details how Awolowo, Enaoro, Omishade, and the rest of them. Let me read that just quickly, so I have that on record. On the Russia, it will take God to change certain people's mind in this country. They'll be telling you. One even did a video. By the way, somebody sent me, somebody tagged me, I think it was T, tagged me in a video yesterday of somebody who took my video and said, you must be careful of this guy. Let me break it down. Let me debunk his lie. The guy said something about a book. Then he now put a picture and acted as if he was talking about the book. What was inside the picture that they posted is totally different from what he was saying. Want to call people in propaganda. And I was like, how on earth are you talking to? There's something I've noticed, right? It's the absolute disrespect that the average intellectual or writer from the East, or even content creator, the absolute disrespect they have for their people. Because you must disrespect your people to claim that you are reading a source, and what you're saying is totally different from the source, the so-called source that you're putting up. It didn't even take me 5 seconds to spot it. Like, now totally different. But guess what? And that's the problem. We have to respect ourselves enough to tell ourselves the truth. The only thing I can do is to do it respectfully. But when you tell people, it's like when you read books by the book by Frederick Forsyth, for instance, or Achebe, I think they don't respect their readers. They must think their readers are stupid. In other words, you're not able to connect the dots. You're not able to connect the dots. You just hear something and you're like, oh, it must be true. Because so the reason you are believing it is because of the personality of the person saying it. In other words, it doesn't even matter what they are saying is a lie. That's why I say don't respect. So that guy was just putting something out up there. Apparently, his people did not notice, but I'm not going to go there and be, sparring with him and now comment in the comment section. And I'll be talking to some people are just like, just be loafing around and be stupid in your stupidity. Anyway, this is the official gazette of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You find it online. It's different from the nonsense you hear Ojukwu did something. By the way, I'm going to read to you what Ojukwu actually said about Awolowo's release. But for now, let's start with the truth, and then we're going to visit the propaganda and debunk it in a bit. So this is the official gazette from the Republic of Nigeria. You see the date here, 12th August 1966. I'm just going to read to you because it's quite tiny. Republic of Nigeria Official Gazette, Lagos, 12th August 1966. Content: Instruments of Pardon, remitting the unexpired portion of the sentences imposed on the following: Chief Awolowo, Chief Anthony Aronsele Enaoro, Lateef Kayode Jakonde, Michael Adedapo Mishade, Sunday Ebiotoma, Effiong Okuneyo, Samuel Akombi Onitiri. Let me read this to you. It says, by His Excellency Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon, Head of the National Military Government, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Nigeria, whereas Chief Awolowo have been duly convicted of the offense of the treasonable felony, and he's been sentenced to 10, 5, and 2 years, and he has served a portion of the sentence originally imposed on him in September 1963. Whereas the Supreme Military Council, after reviewing his case, is pleased to remit the sentence and to grant a full pardon. That's from Gowon. That's the official gazette. That's the instrument of pardon. It was not by Ojukwu. But then Igbo said that Papa was released by Ojukwu. The question is that so? Is it true? And if it is, or is it true? If it is, how is it true? If it's not, how is it not true? Let me read something to you from a document. It's called The Forgotten Documents of the Civil War. The Forgotten Documents of the Nigerian Civil War. Let me say it again. The Forgotten Documents of the Nigerian Civil War by Odia Ofemon. Let me read to you what Ojukwu said. Ojukwu was the one who said it, and his people believe it. They don't care whether it's true or not. Because he said it, they believe it, and that settles it. Why? Because he's another savior. Let me read this to you. He says, Dean Emeka Odumegwu Ojukwu himself will not give up civil war reflexes that ruined millions. In an interview in Boston on July 9th, 2001, Ojukwu told a questioner, quote, "Don't understand. I released even that, some people are beginning to contest as well. Awo was in jail in Calabar. Gowon knows, and the whole of the federal establishment knows, that at no point was Gowon in charge of the East. The East took orders from me. Now, how could Gowon have released Awolowo, who was in Calabar? This is 66, so this is not after the war. It's not during the war. This is August of 66. It would not declare Biafra until May of 67, no. Stay with me. Now, how could Gowon have released Awolowo, who was in Calabar? Because the fact that I released him, it created quite a lot of rapport between Awolowo and myself, Iro. And I know that before he went back to Ikene, I set up a hotline between Ikene and my bedroom in Enugu. Iroini. He said he tried like an elder statesman to find a solution. Awolowo is a funny one, you see. See how smart this guy is. Awolowo is a funny one. Don't forget that the political purpose of the coup, the virginal coup that began all this, was to hand power over to Awo. Who says this? Who said this? Ojukwu. When did he say this? 2001. Is this the first time he said it? No, the first time was in 1967. 18 months after was the first time we heard that the reason for the coup was Awolowo becoming president. And where did we hear it from? From the Eastern Region's newspaper. Let me say it this way. There's no single person who planned that coup, who ever mentioned Awo as being the reason for the coup until after July of 67. And the first person who said it was Nzogu, and he said it afterwards when he was having an interview with Tai Sholari. Every document available tells us exactly why they did it. The best thing you would say, this is the crazy part, and I know that's not today's topic, but it's important to mention it. The best thing you can claim is that they wanted to release Awolowo from prison, because you will find that in Adeboyega's book, Why We Struck. But guess what? By the time you read the special branch report of April 1966, that report debunks Adeboyega's claim in that work. Adeboyega said that they had plans to release Awolowo, Onitiri, Omishade, Jakonde, Enaoro, and the rest of them who were in prison in Calabar. They were going to release them. By the time you read the special branch report of April 1966, and by the way, that report is one of the most important documents about the first coup in Nigeria. Why? Because it's a report that was written after interrogating 200 people. And all the coup plotters and coup executors that were caught, every single one of them was interviewed. So that's Nzogu, Ifajuna, Okafor, Nwobosi, Anuforo, Ademoyega himself, who again, all of them, OG, all of them, Bengbuli, all of them were interrogated, and the document was produced. And in that document, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, in that document we discovered that even Nzogu was not the original planner of the coup. He didn't even know about it originally. He didn't know what the plan was originally, and that's why I've said it several times. Nzogu was a revolutionary, and while I hate what he did to the Sardauna, I actually understand the reason he did it. In his own mind, he's trying to change Nigeria, just like Ademoyega. The rest of the crew, I cannot speak for them. You know why? Because from the very word go, it seemed to be that the entire plan was to have Igbo domination using a coup as a weapon, just because what other weapons they had did not work before 1966. And we saw it from the document we just read earlier. The truth of the matter is this. By the time you look at that special branch report, we discovered that the original planners were Ifajuna, Okafor, and Oji, and that they had no plans at all of going to Calabar. It's in the document. They had no plans of going to Enugu, Benin, or even Calabar. No plans. But Ademoyega is writing in his book, we want to go and release people, because Ademoyega thinks that he was one of the people that started the planning of the coup. But he was brought in October. They started planning that coup in August of 65. Ifajuna, Oji, Okafor. Then they brought in Chukwuka. Then they brought in Anuforo. Anuforo brought in Nzogu. Nzogu brought in Ademoyega. That was how they became 7. 5 majors, 2 captains. And so why am I saying this? All these things that they whip up, they just use Awolowo's name because that's the only thing they can use to give themselves joy in the midst of their lies. There's no connection between Awo and these children of perdition. And yes, I call them that because that you have to be a child of perdition to be committed to lies. No connection. The first publication about Awo being the reason for the coup was something by the Eastern region that came out in 67. And even in 2000, and this is why I don't believe in, this man has done a lot of terrible things to Igbo people for long. Our Igbo. That's how the lie started. But in 2001, Ojukwu was still repeating it, saying he had a set-up telephone, he had a conversation with him. But let's wait though. Let's ask a question though. Did they meet? Did Papa and Ojukwu meet? Actually, they did. They did. And this is something about propaganda. You cannot have propaganda with everything being lies. You have to find truth somewhere and then weave lies around it for it to work. Or else, even the most simple person would know exactly what you're doing. But the reason the simple-minded people cannot tell that it's a lie is because there's a measure of truth here and there. Having said that, let me read something to you from You Must Set Forth at Dawn by Awolowo. So, again, Awolowo was in prison. Was released in prison from 63 September, released in August 66 by Gowon. By the way, he wrote a letter to Iransi while he was in prison. You'll find that letter in 2 books. You see it in, the book is down there. The book is called My March Through Prison, Adventures in Power, Volume 1. My March Through Prison. And you also see it in Awolowo, The Political Moses. You find the letter that Awolowo actually wrote to Iransi. Nothing came out of it. And for somebody who organized it just to free Awolowo, I think they could have brought him out. Iransi became head of state on 16th January 1966. He was unalived on 29th July 1966. 6 months, he did nothing. Gowon became head of state on 1st August 1966. Papa was out of prison on 12th August 1966, 11 days. 11 days. And I read, I don't think I have to go back to some of the books I read earlier just to get into how, you know what, let me just read it just to make the point because it will give us congruence. So let's read the book by John de St. John again. It's called Nigerian Civil War. I'm going to read page 63. We have a lot of books to get into today, but it's going to be fun. You're going to like it. You are going to like it. It says here, Gowon managed to broaden the base of his regime by immediately announcing the abrogation of Iransi's unity decree, promising a 3-phase return to civilian rule, and most importantly of all, releasing the popular politicians, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, that's Awo, the Yoruba leader, and Chief Anthony Enaro, the Midwesterner, who were imprisoned 3 years earlier by the Balewa government. Gowon thus received the credit and finessed it with the gesture of going out to the airport to meet Awolowo and greeting him humbly with the words, quote, "We need you for the wealth of your experience." There's a video evidence, by the way, there's video evidence of Gowon receiving Papa at the airport, right? So I just want to read that just to make that very clear that Ojukwu had nothing to do with it. It's just that he lies. He lied, and I think he still lies because, you know, somehow his words are still here. Moving on. After Papa was released from prison, he participated in something called the Leaders of Thoughts. The meetings, for instance, you find in the book by Adetomo Ogunsheye, she mentioned how they were part of Leaders of Thoughts meeting. The book is called A Break in the Silence. Lieutenant Colonel Victor Adebukonla Banjo. It's written by F. Adetomo Ogunsheye. So she says here, Gowon was installed as the new head of state in Lagos. He was not of Hausa Fulani ethnic stock, but he was a Northerner. He appointed another army officer, Adeyinka Adebayo, as governor of the West. He also released the Western Region leader, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who had been put in detention by the Tafawa Balewa government, thus mollifying the West. With the arrival of the Yoruba refugees in the West, the Yoruba leadership was in dilemma. Under Gowon's regime, the family had enjoyed a respite from harassment and experienced a feeling of being back into the mainstream of politics. My husband and I were therefore invited to the Yoruba Leaders of Thought meeting. This meeting was to deliberate on the stand of the Yorubas. So Papa was part of that meeting. And then eventually, of course, he was invited by Gowon to be part of his government. But around that time, certain things were also said that we talked about last week. So let's go to the book by Soyinka, Wole Soyinka. The book is called You Must Set Forth at Dawn. Just going to read a few things to establish certain things, and then we'll move on to other stuff. So again, we're trying to talk about Awo and Biafra. I'm trying to lay a framework. Last week, I know we read a lot, but sometimes it might take us more than one time to have this conversation to be able to, piece everything together. So you must set forth at dawn. 1 second. This part also talks about the meeting they had that Awolowo had with Ojukwu. As I sat across the famous desk in Awolowo's study, my mind was not on my elder brother from my hometown, but very much on the encounter with the young major, who had threatened summary execution for the politician, among several other ominous signs. And what's he talking about? He's talking about the officer who had threatened to unalive Papa. Let me read what it says here. So again, if you have the book, I'm going to read from page 147. So it says, there was, however, a subsidiary question, one that arose from the first. We were deeply apprehensive for his safety, that's Awolowo's safety. Perhaps no one more deeply than I. As a swaggering officer, a major and of the same Yoruba stock, not boasted to my face that he would personally take Awolowo to the nearest crossroads, tie him to a stake, and shoot him as an example because we know what he's up to. He has not yet given up his tribal games. The officer's definition of Awolowo's tribal games was so simplistic, it was frightening, being none other than the old man's reported reluctance to serve under Gowon's government if it was bent on war, and his insistence that the west of the Yoruba should not become a war zone if that prospect did materialize. So the idea of people calling Awolowo, by the way, this person, the officer who called Awolowo a tribalist is Yoruba. It's not different from the ones you see on Twitter these days and the ones even in real life, the Yoruba bots, you are tribalist. I mean, like I always say, you shouldn't be a big god. You shouldn't hate people anyway. Like, it's a waste of time, waste of energy. But the idea of protecting your space that people call tribalism, own it. Own it. And I've said it several times, this idea of the tribalization that we do in Nigeria, Yoruba land should not be the laboratory where you practice it. Go and do it in your own house. Do it in your family house. And if you're Yoruba, you are doing it, maybe you're doing it at home. Start in your family house. Open the door. Let anybody enter and take over the space. Since you're detribalized, It makes no sense to say these things, because people think they're trying to change. So anyway, this one is one of the ancestors, one of the forebears of the tribalized Yoruba. But I'm going to unalive Awolowo because he's tribalized. What's the basis of his tribalism? He says he didn't want Yoruba land to be part of the war. Anyway, let's continue. Awolowo received me in his office, which was dominated by a massive desk. Who is speaking here? Wole Soyinka. The book is called You Must Set Forth at Dawn. Awolowo received me in his office, which was dominated by a massive desk. It seemed even more substantial than it had 2 years before. We're going to move to the next one. Excuse me. I'm going to jump. I have to move fast. I asked Awolowo, sir, I think you will agree that Gowon is bound to offer you a cabinet position. Suppose you decide to decline the offer. You realize that your life may be in danger. Awolowo looked at me, paused thoughtfully, and nodded. Yes, I suppose I could find myself in that situation. My next statement to him was made with great hesitation, since I could not be certain that he would not begin to have doubts about my sanity. Quote, if you decide to refuse, I stammered, have you thought of going underground? I am sorry, sir. I know that after such a long spell in prison, it is a hard prospect to even consider asking you to resign yourself to another kind of prison, but I still have to ask it. Awolowo sat bolt upright at this, then relaxed again thoughtfully. Quote, well, I have never thought of that, But I've always insisted to myself that my first duty is to the Yoruba nation. We are a nation, you know, and I put that nation first. Then the one called Nigeria. If the moment comes when I firmly believe that it is in our interest for me to disappear, of course I will not hesitate. But you young radical people, what could have moved your mind in such an extreme direction? So I'm trying to explain how he eventually got to work in Gowon's government. At first, Papa was reluctant because he didn't want it to Kubeki Konta Epobala Yoba. And then, of course, Shoyinka is saying, but if you don't agree, they might come for you. Are you going to run? Are you going to hide? What would you like to do? You know, so that's that. Secondly, I want to say this before we leave this book totally, is a part about Ojukwu. Ojukwu said something in that stuff that we read from Odia of Famon, quoting his Ojukwu's Boston interview, or Boston news. I say in that book about Papa in a lie, there's no telephone connect anywhere. You know why? Because I'll read something to you now, how they had their conversation. It wasn't a telephone, it was a Nicodemus event. He went to meet Papa Nicodemusly. It was not a telephone, it was in Enugu. The meetings they had have transcripts. I've mentioned this several times. If you were here, you must have heard me say it. If you want to look for the transcript of the meeting between Ojukwu and Awolowo, here's the book that you should get. And you can get it on Radio Me Books now, Sha, because we're trying to put some things there. Get this book. It has the minutes of the meetings from 6th to 7th May 1967. You will read everything they discussed here. He went, no, not just in secret, though. He went in the night, in the dead of the night. That was when Ojukwu went to meet Papa. We're going to read what they discussed in 1 second. So it is true that Papa actually went to the east. But why did he go there? He went to placate Ojukwu, went to talk to him, to see if he would see reason and not just, go all over the place and, just foment trouble and look for war. Again, we're reading a lot of books today, so we'll be there. So Baba went to Enugu. He went with Chief Marere. He went with a representative from Lagos as well, from Midwest and then from the West. They went to talk to him. This is apart from the fact that kings had already gone to meet Ojukwu to placate him. 6 Yoruba kings went there. They said this last week. 6 Yoruba kings traveled all the way to Enugu. They went to the north as well, but they went to Enugu. Oh, shoot, where was I? 6 Yoruba kings went to Enugu to talk to as well, and the 6 were the Oni of Ife, Alake of Egbala, and Alaafin of Oyo, Oba of Lagos, Awujale of Jebu, and Awolowo of Owo. They went to talk to him, and he still did what he wanted to do. Papa also traveled down. They had the conciliation committee. He still did what he wanted to do. But what happened at the conciliation committee, if you want to read the minutes, like I said, is in that book. But let me just read what Papa said to Wole Soyinka when they were discussing the events of that period. The 1967 Eve of Secession Declaration of National Public Figures, authorized by Yakubu Gowon to engage in dialogue with the Eastern leadership, had been led by Obafemi Awolowo, and the formal, well-publicized meeting between the two sides had lasted nearly all day. The Easterners had listed their grievances and demands, spoken with all apparent seriousness, and seen their guests off to their chalets. Late that same night, however, Awolowo was disturbed by a knock on the door. It was Ojukwu himself. He admitted that he had waited till late into the night so as to be able to speak to Awolowo in strictest privacy. Sure, said Awolowo, but he also insisted, thank God for wise elders. Papa insisted that at least 1 or 2 persons join them. That was agreed, and Awolowo called the adjoining chalet and woke up the police commissioner for the Western region, Olufunwa, and a close political aide. Accompanying Ojukwu was a small team that included a professor of history from the University of Ibadan, who, like other Easterners, had fled to their beleaguered state. Years afterward, in 1996, during the struggle against the Abacha dictatorship, the same Don introduced himself to me at a meeting in the United States and revealed his participation in the nocturnal meeting of 30 years earlier. His account was consistent and detailed confirmation of what Awolowo told you, it has been decided. It was clear that any discussion was futile. Awolowo continued. After all, we had done nothing but talk all day. Ojukwu confessed that he had agreed to meet the delegation at all only out of respect for my person. Biafra had already made the decision. I was not surprised. The chief admitted. I did one thing though. I made a request. At least let us in the West, me specifically, have a minimum of 2 weeks notice before you announce your decision. And he promised. Yes, he promised me that much. That's the first telephone conversation that Ojukwu is talking about. It didn't happen between any. There was a phone call between Ikene and Enugu. It was a meeting that happened in the middle of the night, and I thank God that Papa was wise to say it should not just be between me and you. Let's have somebody else join us. You know why? Because it's just your word against mine. What happened? No witnesses. That's wisdom from the ancients. Let's learn from them. Somebody come and say, I just want to tell you something. Don't know whether they're going to change their story tomorrow. All right. Is that the only place we have Ojukwu and our meeting? No. I'm going to read from a couple more stuff. Let's go to the Nigerian Civil War. By the way, this Nigerian Civil War is a book. The Nigerian Civil War by John de St. John. Please stay with me. Hope you're having a great time. We're going to dig today. Then hopefully we're going to get to currency today. What happened with the currency, Biafran pounds and everything. And then we'll move from there. We'll go to 20 pounds. We'll go to starvation. We're going to end everything with starvation. So it might take us the entire week, but we're going to get there. All right. So let's go to page 120. Although a brilliant tactician, Ojukwu was a poor strategist. He constantly narrowed his future options and maneuverability for the sake of the short-term advantage. The East's uncompromising Confederate stand at the ad hoc conference, its refusal to take part in any of its future discussions, the rigid adherence to the letter of the Aburi Agreement, ambiguous though they were, Ojukwu's point-blank refusal to attend any future Supreme Military Council meetings, and the outright rejection of Decree Number 8, all put him in a position where compromise, especially in the inflamed atmosphere of the times, became impossible, even if he had wanted it. Again, Ojukwu was the one who rejected Aburi, not Gowon. Guys, if you're from the East, sincerely, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. Just about everything you believed have been lies. Or maybe everything you still believe. Now, life, I feel, sincerely, I feel your pain. But guess what? The truth is the truth. Decree number 8 was 98% of what they wanted at Aburi, and Ojukwu still said no. Ojukwu was a very stubborn person. I had no idea what it means to negotiate. Let's get back to this. Then he goes on to say this. He also surrounded himself with a self-interested group of advisors, the inner circle being almost entirely his blood relatives from his hometown of Nnewi. You remember what we read the other time? The book by Nebo Graham Douglas is called Ojukwu's Rebellion and World Opinion, and he mentioned something called the Nnewi clique. The Nnewi clique were the ones making decisions that have to do with the Eastern region. The East Consultative Forum that everybody is always talking about was a rubber stamp. That assembly would just rubber stamp whatever the Nnewi clique and Ojukwu agreed to do. By the way, that book is available free of charge. We're not paying anything. You find it in the Telegram channel if you join Radio Me Global on Telegram. REDOMI Global. So you find a document there. He spoke about the Nnewi clique and how they were running the whole thing. Now, to find it in another book here also, of course, helps you to understand that they were not just making these things up. So he called them people from his blood relatives from his hometown of Nnewi. They were the ones in the inner circle. And it's not surprising. When Ironsi was head of state, his circle was entirely Igbo. Talk about nepotism, talk about clannish mindset, about ethnic jingoism. That's what you find. So he says, the inner circle, sorry, it says he also surrounded himself, that's Ojukwu, with a self-interested group of advisors, the inner circle being almost entirely his blood relatives from his hometown of Nnewi, of whom Mojeku and Nwokedi were the most influential. A certain arrogance, carefully concealed in interviews with foreign journalists and others, but they're all the same, helped to poison relations with other Nigerians, some of whom were valuable potential allies of the Eastern cause. He alienated Awolowo when the latter visited him in May by his offhand and brusque treatment of the older man, and later boasted that he had run things round his military colleagues at Aburi. And although he talked a lot about reactivating the Southern Alliance, his actions worked against its revival. The expulsion of non-Easterners from the East, and even more crucially, his failure to woo Chief Awolowo, the key political figure at this time, left the East more isolated than it need have been. All right, let's move quickly from that and go to the book by A.H.M. Kakirin. This book is called Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria. Just one more thing, then we'll move to how Papa met Gowon. This is from Anthony Nauro's speech at Addis Ababa, 12th August. I quote this speech a lot because it sets things in perspective. One other thing that happened, by the way, again, the full stuff is inside the book. You can get it on Redomi Books. And a link to that is on the Redomi Telegram channel that I put out already. Excuse me. So you have all those things there. But let me read something to you from that meeting they had from Nauro's speech. It says here, in answer to a specific query by Chief Awolowo, the leader of the peace mission, regarding the attitude of the leaders at Enugu to the former northern region and secession, Mr. Ojukwu replied, quote, on the specific question whether there is a possibility of contact with the North, the answer is on the battlefield, end quote. In answer to a specific query by Chief Awolowo, so when he asked the question, he told him, now we will meet on the battlefield. Meanwhile, every conceivable concession was made to Ojukwu, who was then the military governor of the East. So what you see here essentially is everybody was trying to meet him, and even when they asked him what he was going to do, he was bent on fighting, which is why I say every time I feel so sorry for folks from the East, but they don't feel sorry for themselves. So maybe everybody should stop feeling sorry for anybody. I'll go and pray about it, whatever God says. So we've established so far, Awolowo was in prison, was released, he was in prison in 63, was released by Gowon in August of 66, he was part of Leaders of Thought, he was invited by Gowon to be part of his government, he met with Ojukwu, right, but he also met with Gowon. So that's where we're going right now. He met with Gowon. So let's use this book to understand that one. This book is called Gowon, a biography of a soldier statesman by J. Isawa Laido. So contrary to what Ojukwu said, where it was like, now fight, let me read to you what Gowon said. On May 20, 1967, Gowon responded to the request of the National Reconciliation Committee. In his reply, Gowon said he accepted all their recommendations and directed that all ministries and departments should resume normal services with the Eastern region with effect from May 23, 1967. So that's Gowon's response when he eventually met with Papa. He accepted all the responses. By the way, just as a side talk, I want to read something to you about how Gowon actually felt about Igbo people. Gowon, he was very disturbed that Ojukwu did not feel for his Igbos as much as he felt. He appreciated Ojukwu's problems, but felt that I bent backwards, quote, I bent backwards to ensure that we restored sufficient trust and confidence in the Igbo people so that they could come back with us. One was absolutely sincere because I thought in dealing with lives of thousands of your people, there was no room for cheating, falsehood, or lies. You had got to be honest. to resist temptation to score a political point on the other chap. History will be very, very kind to go on. History will be very, very kind to go on. The things he did and the way he did stuff. Ojukwu was one who was wasting his people's lives to do politics. We're going to read those things. For listening to that, we consulted a number of books. We read The Nigerian Civil War by Jonathan Joe. We read Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria by H.M. Kirk Green. Looking at Antonio Nauro's speech on 12 August 1968. We also read a book that I actually consider very, very important. We haven't read it on this platform in a while. It's a book by Professor Wole Soyinka. You Must Set Forth at Dawn. And one of these days, I think we're going to, consult the book again. Anyway, the point that we're trying to make with this video essentially is, it's right at the beginning, is that the way Ojukwu conveyed the information of the propaganda to his people actually made it very believable or very credible. There's something we say in theater and in film, something called suspension of disbelief, right? When you watch a drama or when you watch a movie, sometimes, I don't know if you've noticed, you feel like you're part of the actors. There are even people who will begin to cry just like the actor is crying, or they will be shouting and yelling at the actor because in that moment, disbelief has been suspended. They feel they are part of that story. And that's what you see with the way he got the story out. Not only were they lying, they dramatized it. People felt they were part of it. They saw it, quote unquote. So in their mind, they were looking at Awolowo doing something. They were looking at Victor Banjo doing something. All Ojukwu was doing was trying to get them in the story, and so they made it theirs. And that's why it's very difficult for anyone to be able to, get to the truth with certain people in Nigeria. They are so invested in the lies, they actually consider it to be the, reality. And also, we try to talk about some of the things that Ojukwu has said several times. There's something I said that I think I need to correct, though. I think there's a mix-up. When Gowon became head of state, he became head of state on the 1st of August, 1966. What came out on the 12th was not Awo. It was actually the Gazette. He released Awo on the 2nd of August, the very next day. But the Gazette for the state for the pardon came out on 12th August. So the document I was reading earlier is actually correct, by the way. It's 12th August. That's the Gazette. But Awo came out before the Gazette came out. So Awo was released just after Gowon became head of state. And I remember saying it on there was another session we had, and I was saying that despite the fact that Ojukwu said something else in August of 66, he had a different information for his people in 2001. In August of 66, he sent a telegram to Papa and said to him that the pardon and the release and all of those things actually were the last acts of Ironsi. That's what Ojukwu sent to Awo. You'll find that in the book by Ken Sariwa. The book is titled On the Darkling Plain. Ojukwu told Awo that his release, the pardon, everything was actually the last act of Ironsi. By 2001, Ojukwu is granting an interview to Boston in a Boston newspaper, and he's saying that he's the one that actually released Awo. When you talk to many of these clowns, like the one insulting me in the comment section now, whatever Ojukwu says is the truth. So when he said it was Ironsi, they said it was Ironsi. Now that he's saying that he's the one, everybody says he's the one. It's not really about engaging the brains. It's just about regurgitating nonsense. No matter what Ojukwu says, they must believe because he's the Lord and Savior. By the way, something happened earlier today. We're going to play it tomorrow, where folks in Onitsha were singing the song, Holy, 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 Nnamdi Kanu is another savior. It's quite interesting because I have videos from 1967 when they were singing the exact same song, and the person they were talking about then was Ojukwu. So it looks like every generation has his own version of clowns. Anyway, what else is about the war? Lies. No matter who wrote it, professor or lecturer or lawyer or I'm not saying there's no modicum of truth, right? and I've said this several times, propaganda does not work without a dash of truth. You have to find truth somewhere in there. But the point is that you're using morsel of lies to eat a bit. You are dipping morsels of lies into soups of truth. You will taste the soup, or you are swallowing the lies. So for the most part, now life full everything when they talk. Because it's Tuesday and the video is not very long, I'm going to bring people up who want to, contribute or have some time to just discuss, and then we'll call it a day. Again, it's Tuesday. Tomorrow we're going to continue from where we stopped yesterday, or we're discussing decree number 8. So we're talking about revisiting Aburi, right? So yesterday we stopped at decree number 8, and we mentioned it in the video we just listened to as well. What happened after they go back to Nigeria? That will be our focus tomorrow, and hopefully, this will help us to understand exactly what the decree itself was about, and why Ojukwu should not have rejected it, and what his own people said about the decree. We'll discuss all of that tomorrow. All right, that will be 4 p.m. if your time, West African time. But for now, let's have some people. I think there's a person trying to come up. I'm going to bring that person up, and then if you'd like to contribute, please feel free to send your request. Please, as soon as you get up, please mute, and then I'll call on you to speak. Thank you. That's Ariel Moire on TikTok. While we're waiting for him, I'm going to read some responses on YouTube, some comments here on YouTube. It's Mr. Kado. Good evening, Kushel. New Era says Chino Achebe probably wrote the stage plays. He's not much more of a playwright. I think he's just a fiction writer. But I mean, and the funny thing is that the drama doesn't even make sense. Awolowo was supposed to carry money and give it to Victor Banjo. And if you watch any, I think people should, we need to do news series. We have a few videos of Victor Banjo on Busiori's YouTube channel. But maybe we'll do another series on him. What Ojukwu was doing was to try to justify the act of killing Victor Banjo. And he lied, created a play, had these people watch it in Aba, and they believed in nonsense, and so he felt happy about the fact that they killed Victor Banjo. That's why, if you're a Yoruba, but most likely that's the kind of end you're going to get from this, wonderful humans. New Era says, but truth provides its own evidence. There was plenty to be questioned in Ojukwu's propaganda for all those who sought truth. For example, why was everyone fighting against Biafra, including minorities? Well, if you really think about it, it wasn't that some people did not know they were lying to themselves. It was just that they were looking for glory. They had read about the Second World War. They had read about, the First World War. They had read about the different empires, Roman Empire, the Grecian Empire. They had read about, the Oyo Empire. They've heard about Cannonball. They've heard about all these groups. They've heard about the fact that there are certain groups that have this common ancestry, and Yoruba people can say they're going to Ife. Also, people can talk about Ajita. They didn't have any of those things. So it was an opportunity to create something. So it did not matter. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this. It wasn't just Ojukwu that was pushing this absolute rubbish. As a matter of fact, the main people who were actually very invested in this propaganda were intellectuals. They were university lecturers. There were people working in the media. They participated. They even started pushing the agenda long before the war started. If you read On a Darkling Plain by Ken Saro-Wiwa, they had started talking about creating their own space as at 66. And that's why someone sent me a message earlier on Facebook today, and it's a bit tiring, to be honest. I don't even think I'll be bothering myself anymore. When people say things like the reason Ojukwu did Biafra was for Igbo people, an Igbo person is telling you that thing, you just feel sorry for that person. You are just a dispensable commodity. You were not really necessary. You just used your story and your pain to further his cause. It was something that has to do with his own personal ambition. And that's the truth. That's the truth. why do we even do this? What's my business? My business is that, to be honest, I don't really think I care that much because it's not my business. But the reason it's my business is that people are using that story to blackmail Nigerians. If they had kept that nonsense in their space, wallahi, kò sí nǹkan tó kàn mí. But you can't be coming every morning, you go on social media, just a bunch of like irritants, start talking nonsense. Oh, this is what we do. This. That's why we're talking. To be honest, it's not my story. But when you begin to say you released Awolowo, it has become my story because he happens to be our own father. And where we come from, we're supposed to honor our heroes. You may not know what that is, depending on your history. Anyway, let's go on. So why was everyone, including minorities, fighting Biafra? I think the answer to that question really is that they had seen where. I mentioned the other day that if you go back into like 1948 into 1950, you'd have seen the agitation from folks in southern Cameroon. So that by 53, they got their plebiscite. I think it was 62, they were able to now break off. So people already started having issues in that place. And the reason, there's no other way to put it, the reason is that the majority ethnic group in the eastern region did not have the cultural shoulders to bear the responsibility of that region. They didn't have historical shoulders or cultural shoulders. And I'm using that word, intentionally, like what it takes or what it took at the time to bear the burden of leadership. They didn't have it. They did not have it. I don't know if they do now. I mean, they can't say if they do, but they did not have it. And so that mindset was a mindset of hoarding and grabbing and all kind of things. So the minorities felt displaced. They felt, overlooked. They were not cared for. And so they began to agitate for their own state. Now, it's okay that they agitate for their own state, but even then, the eastern region, the Igbo people refused to allow them break out of the eastern region, which also shows something primitive in the way they understood politics at the time, which I think is still present, to be honest. All right. Thank you very much for that comment, New Era. One more on YouTube. It says, looking for self-glory. Oh, I guess that's what that's about. All right. I think there's someone on TikTok who wants to come up. It's Bumblebee. Hello, Bumblebee. Good evening.
Prof.
Evening, sir.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me up. So
Yes.
I'll just get right to it, to my submission. I think it's becoming very obvious what the issue is. The issue is they got very high on their own supply, or let's say rather that Ojukwu overfed them with their own supply. And that's the supply of propaganda. Today, the eastern governors, the governor of Anambra State, by saying that they should resume markets on Mondays, and is trying to enforce that, and people like Ojukwu, they're trying to reconcile their people to the rest of the country, try to involve them in politics, and you can see that even some eastern governors today are moving to APC just to respect the gentleman's agreement that the North take a turn while the South takes a turn. And they've come to realize, their political leaders, their governors have come to realize that if they support the government of the day to do their own turn, then they know that after 8 years it goes to the North. Then they stand a chance. If they show good camaraderie now, they stand a chance after the North gets 8 years to maybe have an opportunity to be involved in it. But there are people, they don't want that. They prefer the propaganda that they've been fed. Instead of listening to people that have political legitimacy, they would rather listen to people that perpetuate propaganda propaganda and violence, like Nnamdi Kanu and the other young man in Finland that is resting away and eating beans, 2 portions of beans in prison. So the issue is they prefer the victim narrative. And I even discussed with someone recently, not an Igbo person, And he was saying, okay, this is my experience. The person is from the south, is a Calabar person. Like, look, this is my experience with Igbo people, yada yada yada. Before I used to make excuses for them. This person is living in the US, and it was like, of late, no, I really can't deal with them. And he then went ahead to say they haven't healed from the war. And you ask yourself, whose fault is it? It's no one's fault. They have no one to blame. They lost a war that they started. And that's the truth that everybody should run with. Thank you very much.
I've been speaking of, I did not know you did hear me. Thank you for your Thank you very much. So, our war, because for some reason we would rather have this thing. I mean, some schools were doing it a while back. I didn't see any sense in it. Participation trophy. It's an American invention. Participation trophy. Like, you have to do something so the person doesn't feel so bad. And even if you have to lie on your own ancestors, just have to say anything to make that person feel good. The truth of the matter is this: if you're wise, you wouldn't do that. The loser is a loser. Now, losing is an event. It's not a person. The person who lost can win again. But once the person internalizes the loss, he becomes a loser. And I say that because of the comment on Facebook, and I'll read it to you guys. It says Nigeria should support Igbo exit, and let's see how Nigerian tribes love each other without Igbo hate. The truth of the matter is that I don't belong to a tribe in that sense. I'm a Yoruba person, so it's a nation. But again, some people literally just got off trees, so there will be tribes. Anyway, now, structure of a country has nothing to do with love. Of course, I prefer to say people should love each other, but human nature you can't build structures based on the assumption of love. It's assumption of order, or assumption of, like, just make sure that you create order. You build based on order, not the assumption of whatever, whether the assumption of love or whatever. Just create a structure. The thing about clowns like this is that they abhor the very idea of structure, which is why they always complain everywhere they go. Then he said something that I want to respond to. He said, Awolowo betrayal rot in hell. Actually, they are talking about your parents and your elders in your village and your hometown, and anybody you consider to be anybody you look up to in your ethnic group is the one that rot in hell. But let me answer that thing. And I want to use the opportunity to speak to Yoruba people. There's a video we have on YouTube, Basuri's channel. The title is "Did Awolowo Betray the Igbos?" It's something you hear. It's a thing that has been said over and over again. I had to do an extensive research on it, and I did a video on it. That was last year. So please watch that video. But you see, that trope is so deeply entrenched in the psyche of an Igbo person that even Professor Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala wrote it in her book. As a matter of fact, her claims were worse than the claims of Chinua Achebe, who she was writing about. The book, Ngozi and another gentleman, they wrote the book together. It's called Chinua Achebe, Teacher of Light. Achebe had written his own nonsense in There Was a Country, where he said that Awolowo was said to have declared, acting as if he didn't know what he was doing. Then Okonjo-Iweala took it from there and said Awolowo promised the Igbos. Nobody promised your fathers anything. Awolowo did not promise your fathers nothing, so there was no reason for him to. There was no basis for betrayal. We don't betray because we don't make promises we cannot keep. And I'll quickly say it because I think it's a very important thing. And since this clown wrote it in the comment section, I might as well answer. You see, Awo made a statement. First, let me say this. There's a book I want to recommend to you. We mentioned it in that video, and I think you should get it if you're interested in the transcript of the meeting between Awo and Ojukwu between May 6 and May 7 of 1967. The book is called Awo and the Nigerian Civil War. You get it on Redomi Books. But I want to read to you something that Awo actually said, which is something that these clowns' parents did not teach them, which is the only reason a fool like this will come and write that kind of nonsense. By the way, if you insult Awolowo, I get very angry. So he has to be a fool to write that, and no apologies for that. Okay, let me look for that page and read something to you. What Awo said and what their leaders said. Okay. Okay, great. So this is Awo. And by the way, this statement was not even made in Enugu. He made this statement in Ibadan. So it wasn't even a promise to Ojukwu. It was not a conversation with Ojukwu. What he discussed with Ojukwu, we already talked about it earlier, and you'll find it in the book by Awolowo. The book is called You Must Set Forth at Dawn. You also find it in this book, Awo and the Nigerian Civil War. But this is the part that these clowns actually intentionally propagandize using their nonsense, Here's what Papa said. I consider it my duty to Yoruba people in particular and to Nigerians in general to place 4 imperatives before you this morning. 2 of them are categorical imperatives and 2 are conditional. 1. Only a peaceful solution must be found to arrest the present worsening stalemate and restore normalcy. 2. The Eastern region must be encouraged to remain part of the Federation. 3. If the Eastern region is allowed and Lagos should participate in the ad hoc committee or any similar body only on the basis of absolute equality with the other regions of the Federation. Or any similar body only on the basis of absolute equality with the other regions of the Federation. So this is the one they're always holding on to is number 3, and they intentionally misinterpreted. This is what I always said again. Number 3. If the Eastern region is allowed by acts of omission or commission to secede from or opt out of Nigeria, then the Western region and Lagos must also stay out of the Federation. This statement was not a promise to Igbo people. It was a warning to the federal government. But you see, if your life depends on lies, you keep writing this nonsense and saying that your parents will burn in hell, which is where they belong. Now, I'm not talking to everybody. I'm talking to the person in the comment section on Facebook who wrote that nonsense. Now, what does this mean? Awo was telling the federal government that if the Eastern region is allowed, number 1, there is no basis twins. We are not connected anyway. Our civilizations are totally different. You are nowhere close. And this is me being generous. There's nothing that will make Yoruba people follow the pattern of the Igbos. It's not even, it's actually quite senseless. Think about it in the last 6 years. What, guys, what thing, like tell me 1 or 2 things that has been done in the Eastern region that, okay, they've been done in the Eastern region, therefore people are now copying, and I don't know. If it happens, it will be nice, but it doesn't happen. The point is that assuming that Yoruba people will follow suit because you want to do something and calling that a promise is the height of stupidity. And just because your elders have written books on it does not make it true. Like I said, Okonjo-Iweala wrote a book on that, and I was disappointed. I was disappointed. This is a brilliant person. This is a doctor. She's a DG of World Trade Organization. Fantastic economist. You know, she used to be the minister in Nigeria's cabinet. Great woman, but terrible historian. Everybody continues to perpetuate these lies because it makes them feel good about themselves. Somebody betrayed you. Who are you to be betrayed? That's the first question. Number 2, Awo did not make any promise to the Igbos. Awo told the government, if you allow these guys to leave by acts of omission or commission, the Western region and Lagos, of course, at the time was not Lagos State. Lagos State was going to be created on May 27, 1967. This was before then, right? Or around that time, okay? And I was saying that, listen, ourselves, we would also opt out or stay out of the Federation. It was not a promise to the Eastern region, it was a warning to the federal government. So if you lie, by the way, again, I don't say this so that Igbos can change their minds, to be honest. I'm saying this to Yoruba people who feel uncomfortable when they hear things like this, and you want to apologize and say, oh, hey, did my fathers promise you that? Hey, I'm so sorry. Your father did not promise anybody anything. The people that went to fight because of ambition, ego, and just plain stupidity. Awo was in this when we had 6 kings from Yoruba land travel all the way to Enugu to go and talk to a 34-year-old boy to tell him not to lead these people to war. American ambassador, British High Commissioner, everybody was trying to placate this guy. Awo went on May 6 and 7, 1967, and he told Awo that he had built the largest army in Black Africa. The man that was asking government to give him money, federal government gave him £500,000 to feed these people that had returned to the Eastern region from all parts of Nigeria, particularly the North. Ojukwu takes that money, uses it to buy guns. That's the one that people are believing and repeating, saying, Awo did not promise your fathers anything. If your fathers fought without planning, that's their business. Your Bible should stop being... And this is not because of lack of compassion. This is just that you can't continue to be blackmailed as a Yoruba person. It's just stupid. Okay? Now, have you responded to that? I don't know if Ladem, if you're still on Facebook, please say hello so I can respond to the question, because I think it's something that you may want to hear directly. All right. Any other person? I think somebody was raising their hand earlier. We're going to close very soon. We'll be back on Wednesday. That's tomorrow at 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. Mr. Demola, thank you, sir. God bless you. All right, let's have another person. Hello, Erobodo. Good evening. Hello? Hello, are you there?
Yeah, hello, Prophet.
Yeah.
Please, give me a minute, please. I'm sorry. Just give me a minute, please.
Okay. I was actually about to close. Not that you're up. What are we doing in 1 minute? Okay, let me read something to you guys from MCK Ojukwu. He's an Igbo man, by the way, so people like this also tells you that, I mean, knowing that people like this exist also tells you that there's hope, no matter how slim or small it is. I'll read this to you from MCK Ojukwu. He said here, it says, it was widely known that Chief Awolowo led the campaign in the Western region against any attempt to kill the Igbos during that tempestuous bloodletting period. And it is well known to this day that no Igbo man, woman or child was done to death by the Yorubas. The visit to Enugu on May 5, 1967 by Awo and his conversation the subject of continuing public debate ever since of May 6. In fact, we concluded our talks at 10:50 a.m., only 10 minutes before his first meeting with Ojukwu, and I happened to be around in an adjoining room when their private conversations took place on that day, and the following day, May 7. I should therefore be in a position to testify from first-hand knowledge that at no time during that turbulent crisis did Awo abhor any thoughts or take any actions other than those calculated to encourage the continuing identification of the Igbos as an integral part of Nigeria, even if for a trial period of confederal linkage. At the same time, I felt certain then, after listening to him, that should the Igbos be pushed or forced out, he would be willing to lead the West out too, and with the West, Midwest, and Lagos, help to organize a southern condominium. Perhaps the most striking during the first day of his talks with Ojukwu was that Lagos. The transcript of that recorded statement of May 6, 1967 is as follows. Nobody can tell when life will be lost. Nigeria and Midwestern Nigeria, that if anybody can at this stage take the life of an Igbo man or an Easterner, or if any outstanding Easterner loses his life by the act of someone else, the whole of the Western region and the Midwestern region will take it as the end of Nigeria. I can give that assurance on behalf of Western Nigeria and Lagos. This is the person that these clowns are always insulting. It is now left to the people of the Eastern states. This is Ojukwu speaking now. It is now left to the people of the Eastern states, particularly to the Igbos, to bear witness to the fact that Chief Awolowo did indeed fulfill his promises in this crucial matter of life and death and pogrom. Furthermore, there was no doubt that under certain express conditions, which I read earlier, under certain express conditions, the West would also pull out of the Nigerian Federation were the Eastern region to secede. But contrary to widely held belief, especially in Igbo land, he did not make that pronouncement at his meeting with Ojukwu. The transcript of their conversations contains nothing of the kind. The transcript is in the book Awolowo, the Nigerian Civil War. Please get it on Redomi Books. It will help you understand what actually happened in Enugu. Maybe one of these days we'll read the book on the live. But let's continue. So he says, contrary to widely held belief, especially in Igbo land, he did not make that pronouncement at his meeting with Ojukwu. The transcript of their conversations contains nothing of the kind. Rather, the undertaking was given by Awo at a meeting of the Western Nigeria leaders of thought held at Ibadan in May 1967. In it, he said the Eastern region must be encouraged to remain part of the Federation. If the Eastern region is allowed by acts of omission or commission to secede from or opt out of Nigeria, then the Western region and Lagos must also stay out of the Federation. In view of the above, Chief Awolowo could have been rightly accused of having committed a breach of his undertaking were he to have reneged on one or more of the following three propositions as contained in the very significant statement under reference. Number one, proposition to encourage the Eastern region to remain part of the Nigerian Federation. Number two, proposition that the Western region and Lagos would also stay out of the Federation if the Eastern region was quote-unquote allowed to secede. Number three, proposition relevant to the phrase quote-unquote acts of omission or commission as a factor governing the Western region's commitments to secede from the Federation should the Eastern region be pushed out. Every available evidence so far has exonerated Chief Awolowo on all counts. Unlike Pontius Pilate, the accusers of Awo on this secession issue ought to be bold enough to admit that they were wrong and consequently should cross off false charges, rather hypersensitive questions. Sorry, it was one word. Excuse me. So it says here, I'll take that paragraph again, it's very important. Every available evidence so far has exonerated Chief Awolowo on all counts. Unlike Pontius Pilate, the accusers of Awo on this secession issue ought to be bold enough to admit that they were wrong and consequently should relieve him of the heavy cross of false charges that he has justly been made to bear in connection with this rather hypersensitive question. Your fathers failed, and it's okay to fail. You try again with sense next time, not to be lying on everybody. So, no, I did not promise your parents something. Ojukwu said, those who actually come up with this decision thing, they should be bold enough to acknowledge that they failed, which is okay. Don't fail once or twice, several times. We read his biography, autobiography. People fail. Have you not failed in some things? Does that make you a failure? No. But when, instead of taking responsibility for your mess up, you decide to apportion blames and blame, and I'm talking about people who did not even make you any promises. So, back to you, Ezelo and Thony, your parents and those that you belong to are the ones. But having said that, again, why do I speak like this when Awolowo is mentioned? Because listen, if anybody wants to destroy you as a people, all they need to do is to begin to attack your heroes and the people that you look up to. Listen, if they were wrong, I'll even say, okay, you messed up. And if it was wrong, we'll say it. But to lie and to constantly attack that person is because, number one, they don't have Igbos don't have any heroes. Number two is an intentional attack on you, on your psyche. The issue with Igbos since 1938 has actually been psy-op. They do psy-op. It's psychological warfare. And the person doing it knows exactly what he's doing. He's weak. He can do nothing else but use his mouth. And he knows how to make himself look like a victim so that the stronger person begins to doubt the need to be strong. Before you know it, you are saying, why did God even make me strong? Why shouldn't I just be as weak as this other person? No, let that person become as strong as you, but they can't because they can't build structures. All of that to respond to the clown in the comment section of Facebook. Thank you very much for listening to that comment. All right. Erobodo, are you ready now, or should we go to another person?
Yes, Prof. I'm ready.
Okay.
Good evening, my brother. Once again, thanks so much for the wonderful work you're doing of the Lord's work, to deliver people from the darkness of ignorance. Thank you so much. So I want to say something. So personally, I believe that there are Igbo people who I would say are honest enough to know these problems with their people. I think those people are an endangered species amongst their people. Because what I have noticed is that they're usually hated by their own people for speaking truth to them. I've seen examples in Hicks, Anambra, Okezie, Tani. These people will say, look, Igbo people, in Igbo land, we don't allow this. So why do you go to Yoruba land and you do these things? It is not right. They are ostracized by their own people. So I think, I feel it's a cultural thing, a value system thing. So it's something that only they can fix. Now, to go to something you said earlier, I think there's so much ignorance that, people like you need to help Nigerians, have that reorientation about how a country needs to be structured and why it's not hate, to say you love your own, or to boldly declare that your commitment is forced to the people, that you are part of. It doesn't mean you hate everybody else. It just means that, look, these are the people you understand. These are the people you want to focus on. You're not doing anything to negatively affect everybody else. No, you're not. You understand? And, and that's why, like a multi-ethnic country like Nigeria needs to be structured around, by recognizing our differences, not by pretending that they don't exist. So, look, we can't structure a country around, unity, love, and saying all of those things. We can look at countries that work. Is that what they're doing? No, that's not what they're doing. So, to that end, look, there is a book I always like to, a paper from Harvard that I always like to refer to. It was on ethnic fractionalization, and they studied. I think there were 191 countries in the world at that time. They studied data on about 190 of them, data on governance, institutions, economic growth, and all of these things. And the results were very clear. Places that have high ethnic fractionalization, which is another word for ethnic diversity, and who are not managing it very well. There is negative correlation between their diversity and GDP and economic growth and quality of institutions and political stability. So this thing, I mean, there is some science to governance. If, like if we just apply that in Nigeria, there's some science to it, such that, look, if we apply those things, we will see the results. So that's the thing. I mean, like, look, I commend you. I'm very happy, for someone like you, doing what you're doing. It's really great. Thank God for you. And my hope is that, these things you're teaching, would ultimately, get to the grassroots, where people can understand what you're saying in their own language, and and then maybe build a critical mass that can say, look, we've tried this unity thing enough, we've tried this love thing enough. Let us try common sense. Let's try what's being tried and tested and it works elsewhere. Thank you, Prof. That's just what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your submission. I really do appreciate it. And we're gaining grounds. I think eventually, like I've always said, but let me say something. I am not against Nigerian unity. I just don't think this is how to unite a country. I think this unity is based on a very faulty foundation, therefore it cannot stand. So I want Nigerian unity, unless of course we get to the point where we're like, at this point, everybody go their separate ways. But as it is right now, there's nothing wrong with having Nigeria as a country. However, it's important that the structure is actually put in place, like a proper structure is put in place, or else people just be making themselves happy, shouting one Nigeria. Meanwhile, you're not standing on a very strong foundation. And what foundation are we talking about? Is the structure, is the way we are composed in this country. And that conversation, thankfully, is something that is going on now, and hopefully we look forward to a proper resolution in the coming days. And you guys, let's all also share this stuff with our folks. Again, it's more about rearrange. I don't use the word restructuring because it's been so bastardized in Nigerian political conversations. But essentially, that's what it is, to restructure Nigeria. But the best way to do it is along ethnic and linguistic lines. That's the truth, right? If you don't do that, whatever you do will get Nigeria to be better. If you change the status quo, like what the president is doing right now, it will get better, but it will never really reach the highest potential. And eventually, people might still have that thing about breaking away and seceding and, just being what they are. But if you have a proper structure that acknowledges people's differences, understands where they are, and then you decide to work together based on those realities, I think it's a bit more realistic. Even if you want to break away from that point, that's okay. But all this one where we just do as if say, if we talk, people like say no like unity, is actually not very wise. And Roboto says, I meant the unity that pretends you're yes, you are correct. You are correct. I know, I heard you. I just wanted to make sure that well, on social media, people hear things differently. So I'm just trying to amplify what you're saying. So yes, it's important to properly structure Nigeria. That's how we can grow. That's how we can become everything that we can become. And this structure is not working. But thankfully, I should also say this before we leave that topic. Thankfully, the president we have is somebody who thinks structurally, and that's why we have development commissions right now. Hopefully this year, they are going to have that budget, that money, and then they can really begin to work. I'm really looking forward to seeing them, do some fantastic things in our region, particularly in Southwest Yoruba land and other places. All right, it's been an interesting conversation today. I want to thank everybody who has been part of this conversation, the folks who came up as well. Thank you very much for coming up. We're going to continue the gist on Aburi Accord and Decree number 8 on Wednesday. That's tomorrow at 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. I hope that these sessions help us understand more what Nigeria really is about. There is more hidden than what's revealed. All right, and I hope, and the beautiful things that are hidden in materials that we can get. The way they've done Nigerian history or Nigerian, Nigerian conversations is that they are hidden in plain sight. They are buried in books. But as we gather here, and have conversations. We're able to unearth those things and have proper discussion. And hopefully, these things will lead to what we really want: a proper Nigeria, properly structured Nigeria, and a developed country. And it's not impossible. It is not impossible. All right. Yamunite says, Prof, can you discuss border control and how to checkmate mass migration, because development will be stunted without this? Sincerely, I don't know how to have border control and checkmate mass migration. I mean, I could tell you something that will sound good, but it would be a lie. I don't lie. I'll say something. The practical way is to acknowledge two groups for the Southwest, to acknowledge two particular groups. Number one, the indigenous people of that place. Number two, indigenous people of that region. Last year, December, they were trying to recruit people into Amotekun in Ondo State. And they had a number of criteria, but they mentioned two actually, were very important to me. Number one, of course, you have to be an indigenous of Ondo State, or
what that does is that
you are Yoruba.
The owners of the space.
Now, what that does is that you acknowledge the owners of the space, because of course, Amotekun is Western Nigeria. We have to have that mindset first. When it becomes clear that certain things are the exclusive preserve of people from here and their siblings. Now, once you have that mindset, it will now begin to determine the kind of laws you put in place. And I'm saying that because I've heard people say things like, you're going to shut some people out. They will not come into your region because you're going to show that you're kiniko. It's a lie. Ghana cannot legitimately shut out certain people, regardless of how they constitute nuisance in their country. Why? Because they're part of ECOWAS. Even if you have a Yoruba nation, you still be in ECOWAS. But Ghana can protect its people and exclude others. There's no law against that. That's how to curb migration. You make the place unfavorable for certain people. Because, I'll give an example. What did Ghana say about trade? They said they don't want foreigners to be involved in petty trading and retail. If you're coming to their country, you've got to do wholesale. Why are they doing that? They're trying to protect their own people so that they can do retail and wholesale if they want. So even though you can't say don't come into our country because we're all part of ECOWAS, you can say there are certain things you can't do here because we have to protect our own. I think that mindset of protecting our own is actually what's primary. Like if we have that, it would then, do other things. But when people say things like they're going to shut the borders against certain people in Nigeria, people can say things and feel happy about it, but I don't think that's how things work. But the governors first have to have, folks in the national and in the state houses of assembly, and I think they are having it, to be honest, but that thing has to be deeply entrenched in our thinking as Yoruba people. You talk about the owners of this place. I want to own the state, then I want to own beyond the state where you're thinking of the region. That mindset begins to affect the kind of policies you make. Anybody that gets angry with that can go back to their own place and go and create the same thing. You're not going to chase anybody away. You don't have to shout. You just create policies that excludes people. That's what I can say in public, but I'm sure you get what I'm saying. Yeah. So I think, the way to curb it is, for another example. If you say, for instance, you are banning bikes on your road for certain, you have already closed your door to certain classes of people. Because, and if you notice, and you go around Yoruba land, like in different states, more than Yoruba people. I don't know if you notice. Like Yoruba people also do bike business, they also do Okada. But I'm saying that there are certain groups that seem to be dominating that group. So if for instance, of course, the reason is not because you hate any groups, because you are trying to ensure that there's safety on our roads. But if you have that kind of policy, you already excluded certain people. That's the way. But I believe that our political leaders also think in that direction. All right. any other thing I want to say probably in private. But thank you very much for asking that question. I hope I answered you or gave you the answer you.
All right.
No, actually, not the answer you want. I hope you got the answer I gave. That's a better way. All right. Someone says, how about licensing everything?
Yeah, if that helps, yes. The British government is pro-immigration.
I don't. Yeah, if that helps, yes. The British government is pro-immigration, but still stifle immigrants from certain segments. Yes, but it's a bit dicey when it's within the space. Erobodo said, I think that allows Southwest to gatekeep everything.
The details, right?
That's why I said it's. See, the details, right, will come in different ways. But the core of it is that you are trying to protect the interests of Yoruba people. And that's why you notice our governors, when our governors speak, yes, they speak for their states, but they often also speak for the region. Because they are all part of Dawn Commission, they are all part of Southwest Governors Forum, they think regionally, which is a blessing, right? Which is a huge blessing. We don't know how beautiful that thing is. It's a blessing. So, but that mindset is actually what is important. The details are things that they can. I don't like discussing details on social media personally, and I don't know. I don't understand why people do it. Because I think that there's certain things that you get, but the core that nobody can fault you on is the fact that every representative must have at the back of their minds that the idea is to protect their people. Once you have that thing in your mind, every other thing is based on that mindset of. And the reason I say the ones I can say in public is because it's also something that we also have to appreciate. Like, it's not a sin. There's nothing wrong in self-preservation and protecting your own interests in your land. And we have to raise our children to think like that as well. Love everybody, but protect yourself. The crazy part is this, and I'll say this. In this country called Nigeria, the group that doesn't really think about self-preservation, or that rarely thinks about self-preservation, is Yoruba people. We have this laissez-faire attitude towards things. We just chill, like komata, omao. So we have to love everybody, which is important, but protect your space. It can't be on. So I think that message is actually the one that has to go into our mindset, where you can respect people, but there's only so much they can get to in your land, and you don't have to apologize for that. Guess what? In their spaces, they don't even do what I am saying. They gatekeep everything. Everything is if you're thinking about the word gatekeeping, you don't find it in Yoruba land like that. We do it too. I'm not saying we are perfect though. We do it, but we are more laid back, which is good and bad. Good because you can charge different people, bad because you can lose your space. So, and I think our fathers know that balance. Yamunite says, sorry. Point. Yamunite says, like the demolition of that so-called Venice of Africa. I don't even think they demolished every part of it, but there will be nothing wrong in demolishing that place, to be honest. And I say this with all sense of compassion to the people, and I get it that people live there. But here's what I found in this country. I think people like, how do they call this thing? It's like suffering porn or something like that. People will stay in their comfortable houses and make the case for people living in terrible conditions, and say that government should not do anything about that place because where are they going to go? You see, I don't like talking about things like that. I'll show my face when I want to talk about it, because I really have to discuss it. The truth of the matter is that the person who is saying, do you know how much money gets into some of those, slums in Lagos? There are NGOs that are kept alive, not afloat, alive, because of Makoko. Venice, Mary, you will not see all those, Paco houses. You will be seeing like proper buildings on water. But no, we'll keep people poor and make money from the issues. How do you put the English? Anyway, that has to be done, and I think it's also for their safety because they were building under high tension, aren't we? Those massive electrical poles, and you're building inside water under high tension. And even now, I saw somebody, I don't want to mention that person's name. I've never really talked about this Makoko thing, saying Kiniko is good. I'm like, you live comfortably. You live comfortably, but you're going to get famous off of their own predicaments. You're going to get famous off of whatever it is they're going through. You're going to. It's like when there's a conversation. We're done today. I'm just talking. There's a conversation I was part of some years ago. These guys, PhD holders in the UK, and we're talking about Almajiri in the north. You would expect that this person will be making the case for why that thing should be scrapped and how it should at least be reformed, if not scrapped. The guy was talking about how he too was an Almajiri and how it makes sense. I'm like, you are in the UK, you have your children here. Will you want any of your kids to be Almajiri? And the ones who are there right now, what are you going to do to get them out of there? Not to take care of them in there. There are two ways. You can actually create low-cost housing, and government, of course, has a lot of work to do in creating low-cost housing across the state. But there's some you can do more than just go there and give them biscuit and bread, take pictures, and say, "Oh, I've gone to Makoko," and then you will collect money as an NGO. You now give them. See, I have friends who used to work. I have friends who work in NGO. If you know how money goes in that place, may God bless everybody in this country. We are corrupt too as the people. Are corrupt by day. Are comfortable. We're always speaking English. We're very corrupt people. Go and use people's suffering to collect money. Most of the money will be taking care of you in Agungi and Lekki and VI. May God forgive me. Well, it is well.
Yes, now they're almost touching Third Mainland Bridge, but no, don't touch it too, because where would they go?
Yes, now they're almost touching Third Mainland Bridge, but no, don't touch it too, because where would they go? And guess what? Some of the people that said don't touch it were the ones who were saying that these guys are almost at the Third Mainland Bridge. The government should do something about it. And of course, before government would do something like that, they would have warned you. They would have sent letters. Let me say something. It may sound a bit harsh, but it's the truth. I would have loved to say this on camera, but I'll say it this way. Maybe I'll say it again tomorrow, but this is the truth. If you move to a town, it is not the job of that government to create a place for you to stay. Let's stop being childish in this country. There are homeless people in the US. It is not the responsibility of Sanwo-Olu to create homes for people that are leaving the estates to move into Lagos. If you move into Lagos and go and live under high tension or live under the bridge, and they go and say, they say, I'm even speaking, and they say, it's time to come out, so it's time to leave that place. You can't say that, why are they not going to provide income? They would have told you, find a place. Listen, there was a time, we used to do evangelism. One time, story, once upon a time, it was somewhere around Awolowo. I saw the condition. Like, must you be in Lagos? I couldn't say it out of obviously, but I was like, must you be in Lagos? Because it's like living inside sickness. Everywhere was just not Makoko now. This is some very Lungu part of Oro. Like, why? May God lead all of us. May God guide us. May God show us a path to take. And may we be able to help people in such predicaments. But there are things that, maybe I won't say it now, Sha, but I think you get the point I'm trying to make. There are things that we have to be very careful about. All these things, we are very, very emotional. Government should not do anything. You will leave your state, move to another person's state, live under the bridge. The government says leave the place. Has government provided another place for them? Did your father provide a place for you in Lagos before you moved to Lagos? Or did they tell you that there's a free house in Lagos that government just provides for people that are moving from their states to Lagos? We ask, and this thing about Lagos, we expect Lagos to just...
Don't say they pay tax like that too.
We
Anyway, we go I wanted to say, I just
Nobody say they pay tax like that, though.
it sounds very.
Anyway, may God bless. The thing I wanted to say, I just don't want to go into it because it's going to sound very harsh and it's difficult because people are going through things. So you have to find that balance between compassion and structure. Like, okay, you can't live under high tension, but we have to provide something for you. And I think that's where NGOs actually come in reality. Government should provide low-cost housing, but when they are failing, NGOs are supposed to come into that place. But in Nigeria, our own NGOs, they are doing well in Jesus' name. Amen. What this says is today's question and answer. We're already done. We're done with the recording. Yamuna says Nigerians will move into floodplains and blame government when river by them. Like President is now Moses that will divert Red Sea or what? That's why I said, like, I want to say it, I'll now stop myself. It's difficult to say some of these things, but it's the truth. May God bless people. May God bless all of us. But there are certain places that there is no need. Just putting your life at risk because we must be in Lagos. Meanwhile, God may have put your blessing in your village or also be a farmer, but you don't know. Just be struggling. But who knows? You might struggle now and then you have your breakthrough. That's why we can't talk like that, but you get the point. Winsome says they know what they are doing, anything to make Lagos look terrible because of its heritage and politics. I guess so. You never see them say anything about worse states. Well, it is well with Lagos. May God continue to bless Lagos and give us great leaders, and all of southwestern states. May God continue to give us great leaders that can actually think. And to be honest, our leaders also need to do some serious work. Like the bare minimum, they have to do better. Roads. I was just thinking, Dow. I saw a video yesterday in Ondo State. Why now? Our governors need to get better. I saw something that Ogun State released yesterday. They did some roads. People need to also acknowledge when they do something good, because when we were shouting over Ogun State the other day, and that's the right thing to do. Now they've started, building some roads, so that's good. Anyway, what I'm saying basically is that the government should also do what they have to do, but people should stop expecting, can't be moving anyhow and be expecting government to go and be creating houses and say, okay, all of people that just come to Lagos, come and stay here. Say, Kini. That's why you have shelter in the US. And who knows? If you are very passionate about these things, let me also say this, if you're very passionate about things like this and it pains you to see people live that way, and it does pay me, by the way, maybe God wants to bless you to the point where you can also create shelters in Lagos. What's stopping us? Create shelter, feed people maybe once a day, they eat and sleep and then go out. They don't have to sleep under the bridge. That's what the NGOs do. Not all this keeping people in poverty while they are living in Ikoyi. May God bless everybody.
Let's have anthems.
All right. Let's have our anthems as we close the session for today. What it says is the orientation we have once had that is causing all this. I guess so. But we'll be all right. We have something else to give, and it will take a while, but Awolowo. Thank you very much for being part of today's session. All across the platforms, on TikTok, on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you, and Twitch as well. Thank you for liking and sharing, and thank you for power tapping, and thank you for being part and for engaging, for writing stuff in the comment section, and for also coming up to speak earlier. That was Erobodo and Bumblebee. Thank you very much. Motolani Said on YouTube, good evening. All right, we're going to have our anthem, and then anthems actually, because we have Nigerian anthem and then Yoruba anthem, and then we will call it a day. Please join us tomorrow at 4 p.m. if a time West African time. We're going to have a great time together discussing Aburi and decree number 8. There are certain things that you probably haven't heard about it before. Even if you know those things, please come around. When it's time to come up, you can also come up and share with us what you know about the topic. All right, before we leave, let's have the Nigerian anthem and also the Yoruba anthem. Please sing along. If you don't know the lyrics, learn the lyrics. God bless you.
We assemble that truth and justice reign in peace, all battle honored, and this we count as gain. To hand unto our children a banner without name.
May God bless you. May God bless our country. We'll do it and everything there and upon in Jesus' name. Thank you very much for being part of this session. I'll see you again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. Do have a lovely evening. God bless you. Odaro.